Another look at 6th level spells? Don't mind if I do. Hello there everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your Master of Lore and Storyteller Extraordinaire, bringing you another episode of our look at the 1st edition Pathfinder Arcanist guide. Today we are going to be taking a look at more 6th level spells, and while the last time around we covered this class and their 6th level spells, we are talking mostly about some of the best options you could hope to pick up. Today the emphasis is going to be more on some of the different, more interesting spells that can still be really good, but depending on circumstances of, say, campaign and the like, maybe the usefulness kind of fluctuates a little bit. But, that said, having a breadth and depth of knowledge is never going to be a bad thing for you, and as always, the goal is to learn how to put together a character class in a competent fashion. We're not really looking towards anything uber optimized, busted, and broken that can absolutely dunk on any other build that you could throw out there. We're not worried about that here. More worried about just putting together something that works, having fun, and building a character that feels more like a character rather than a collection of the most optimized stats and options. But before we get into everything we have available for you today, if you're new here to the channel, go on down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamer's Den. Or if you've already gone on ahead and listed yourself on that incredible roster of legendary heroes, then go on down there to hit the like button and share the video far and wide. Now, let's get into things here, and this first spell was an interesting one. I've seen a couple of guides rate it pretty highly, although in my case, looking at it, it feels just a little bit more circumstantial in some instances. But it is the Baleful Shadow Transformation spell. You target one creature within 25 feet plus 5 feet every 2 caster levels, so at 6th level, that's level 12, so you're getting another 30 feet out of it. You target a huge or smaller creature of the animal type or medium to small creature of the humanoid type, and on a failed will save, it believes it is a creature of the chosen type you've transformed its shadow to. So if you transform, if you target a wizard and you transform their shadow to that of a rabbit, they can end up potentially believing that they are a rabbit. It also must make a fortitude save versus the spell save DC the first time they are subject to this spell or actually take the physical form of the creature per the polymorph spell. So if they fail that fortitude save, they are now literally going to be a rabbit. If the transformation would leave them unsafe in their environment, for example, a fish on land, if they're clearly out of their element, or if you transform, say, a kraken into an elephant a few hundred leagues down under the sea, well, they are going to receive a +4 bonus on all saves for Baleful Shadow Transformation, which seems sensible. But there's still yet more to cover here. Every 24 hours after the spell has taken effect, the target must make a will save to disbelieve this effect. Successfully disbelieving the spell reverts a creature to its true form. Incorporeal and gaseous creatures are immune, and creatures with the Shapechanger subtype can revert their form at will. It should be noted that targets that fail these saves lose their extraordinary abilities, including resistances, supernatural abilities, spell-like abilities, and get the intelligence, wisdom, and/or charisma of their new form. So they are going to be seriously hindered and diminished. However, the biggest drawback to this is the fact that you're limited to animal types and humanoid types. Now, granted, those are very broad categories, but those aren't always going to be the most threatening things, and not all of those are necessarily going to have a whole lot of extraordinary abilities, supernatural or spell-like abilities. Granted, humanoids can have a much broader range, and because in most campaigns you are going to be facing down against humanoids of some variety, this spell can be incredibly useful. However, if you're focusing largely on undead or outsiders, they're not going to be as readily affected by this spell, and so in that case, it's not going to be incredibly beneficial to you. However, again, given that you essentially learn spells like a wizard, there really isn't any harm in you picking this up. Maybe it's not something that's going to be used all the time, but it's definitely a useful one. It's also important to note that beyond the every 24 hours getting a save, the effect is essentially permanent, and once it's laid on, further polymorph attempts fail against the creature. It has to be removed in some fashion, or they make their save. Next, we have Sirocco. Select a 20-foot radius, 60-foot high area within 100 feet plus 10 feet every caster level, and for 1 round per caster level, you conjure a blast of searing hot wind that deals 4d6 fire damage plus 1 every caster level to all creatures in that area and knock them prone. A successful fortitude save reduces the damage by half and keeps them standing. Flying creatures are forced to the ground unless they make a DC 15 fly check. Any creature taking damage from Sirocco becomes fatigued, and fatigued creatures become exhausted with no save. Water subtype creatures take a -4 penalty on these saves. So that's the big selling point right here at the end, is that any creature taking damage becomes fatigued, and fatigued creatures become exhausted with no save. There's no saves for any of that, which is going to really limit their action economy, their ability to just get anything done. I mean, the penalties that are applied with it are great. However, the biggest drawback to this is the fact that it deals fire damage. Now, if you're going with this build and you're taking a look at the admixture sub-school for the evocation school, you can swap out the elemental damage type, so you can turn this into, say, a cold effect instead. So it's a blast of freezing wind that is knocking creatures down or knocking them prone. Granted, the DM does have some leeway on determining the effects that the spell has in that instance, but overall, looking at this, I would say, knocking targets prone, making them fatigued and exhausted, that still feels appropriate for that kind of a blast of wind. I mean, if you've ever been out in the cold and how quickly it ends up sapping your ability to want to move. I mean, it's not exactly fatigue, but it is draining in a way. Maybe you could change that over to some kind of a freezing effect or a paralytic effect where targets are moving at half speed and it can only take, a move action or something like that. I could be sold in a lot of different ways for this spell to maintain its effects, but as I said, because it deals fire damage, that kind of makes this less effective right out the gate, just because, again, there are so many different kinds of enemies that resist fire or are outright immune to it, and because the fatigued and exhausted conditions are explicitly dependent on any creature taking damage from Sirocco, then, this definitely reduces its effectiveness, but it affects a pretty significant area to a reasonably high height, so you can catch flying enemies, and it has effects for those flying enemies. The only drawback with that is they are able to make DC 15 fly checks to maintain their altitude, their ability to fly. However, again, fatiguing them, making them exhausted, you're really going to be limiting their ability, again, to do anything. So, Sirocco, really good spell, really interesting spell. It's a shame it deals fire damage, but it makes sense, like the description, it all fits. It's a searing blast of hot wind, it's a Sirocco, but again, something where you're definitely going to want to look at admixture for changing things up, so that way the damage can remain relevant and you can get those debilitating effects coming down on your opponents. Don't forget, again, that because you're an Arcanist, you can boost your caster level and get more damage and more rounds per level out of this. Next, we have Stone to Flesh. I actually really like this spell, as well as Flesh to Stone. Target one petrified creature or a cylinder of stone from 1 to 3 feet in diameter and up to 10 feet long, and turn the target to flesh. Living creatures turned to stone must make a DC 15 fortitude save to survive the process, and a creature of any size may be restored. So this is great not only for, fixing up that allied character that managed to get themselves turned to stone. Perhaps they looked at a Medusa or a Beholder, turned them to stone with one of its eye stalks. This will let them get back into the fight, or at least amongst the rest of the living and mobile and non-petrified. But this also is useful for causing quite a bit of damage. Say you target a load-bearing structure, a load-bearing pillar that's made out of stone, and reduce 3 feet in diameter up to 10 feet long. That's a significant amount of stone to suddenly just be reduced to flesh and then just collapsing in on itself or flopping out of the column. You are significantly weakening the structure overall, and if that's not going to cause enough damage, well, a nice follow-up with a disintegrate spell certainly will add to the destruction. But with a little bit of engineering or structural knowledge or know-how like that, you can cause an incredible amount of damage and really cause damage and modify your environment, which is really, really, really going to be useful. Next, we have Flash Flood. I kind of like this one, even though it's just kind of okay. Call forth a 60-foot cone-shaped burst of water that requires a reflex save or take 1d6 damage per caster level, max 12d6, so you're already topped out on this. You also roll a Bull Rush combat maneuver bonus equal to your caster level plus your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma modifier, whichever is highest, which is actually a really nice touch there. The Bull Rush attempt obviously does not provoke an attack of opportunity, and the water persists for 1 round per caster level, essentially creating like a marsh or bog area where you are currently at, or at least where the area of effect for the spell is. So, the fact that this deals just flat damage, pretty nice. It's not bad. It's not a lot of damage, but it's nice. And the fact that it's a 60-foot cone-shaped burst emanating from you, you can actually catch a fair number of opponents with this. Just by this level, the number of opponents who are going to be well, it's hard to say. Again, it's going to depend on the campaign. The number of opponents who are going to be severely hindered by a bull rush, maybe not the most broadly guaranteed thing to have happen, but the fact that you can still end up potentially pushing some enemies back, and you can catch many opponents in this, means that this is actually something that's worth considering, particularly as a defensive option. If you're getting swarmed and they're coming right at you, this can push a lot of opponents back. And again, this is probably going to be ideal for targeting a bunch of your chaff enemies, just the random goons and whoever is coming charging out to make your life hell and burn up resources. A 6th level spell might feel a little bit extreme, but if you're being flanked, this is going to be pretty nice for pushing those weaker enemies back, and they're more likely to be susceptible to this, generally. Some opponents are, of course, going to be more stable, like dwarves have a resistance bonus to bull rush attempts, if I'm remembering correctly. Creatures with multiple legs tend to also be resistant as well, but, it's not bad. It's not the greatest, and the damage isn't something that you're really looking at this for. It's more the fact that you're doing a mass bull rush in a huge area, and the fact that this can work off of intelligence, wisdom, or charisma also makes this nice, because if you're changing up your build and you're leaning more heavily into your charisma over intelligence, then this can still be a fairly viable spell for you. But, of course, that's everything that we have here for us today, and there are plenty more spells. I mean, the 6th level spells, throughout the different boards and guides that I went through, there were a lot of 6th level spells that ranged from mechanically terrible to amazing. I haven't even covered all the amazing spells here, but what do you think? Go on down to the comments below and let me know your thoughts. Did you like today's video? Did you dislike it? Are there any other spells that you feel like are worth mentioning? Even if it's something that isn't incredibly great, if it's something fun or something that's useful in some niche situations, let us know in the comments down below so we can all engage and join in discussion and share the knowledge around. And if you've made it this far, you must have enjoyed something, so why not go down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamers Den. But with all that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Thank you all so very much for your time. Good gaming to you all, and you all have yourselves a good night.